Hello and welcome to another daily devotion as we talk about confessions, raw and real. I'll tell you, we see these high-powered trials all the time, whether it was O.J. Simpson driving down the interstate in his, a Blazer? Even though it has gloves and a wig in it, somehow he gets off without being charged. We see these guys at Enron clearly have done misconduct, and yet so many of them with great lawyers buy their way out. The powerful having enough clout and getting accustomed to a place where they say, you're not going to really have to do. Martha Stewart, you don't really have to do any harm. It's a prison for rich folks. Now you can get back to making commercials for the Super Bowl, right? King Saul was a person of great power in Israel. God told him to go, take care of Israel's enemies, and make sure they don't come back. Wipe them out. Kill their leader, kill their king. Wipe out their army. But the people say, we could make nice with these people. We could make a treaty. We could share space with him, even after all the terrible things he's done. So that's what Saul does. He wants to be liked. He wants to be popular. And everybody in the crowd cheers him for his leniency. But it's not what God told him. So Saul is feasting and celebrating with his entourage of well-wishers. And the prophet Samuel shows up in 1 Samuel 15. He says, Saul, what have you done? Saul says, what are you talking about? You know exactly what I'm talking about. But Saul has to have Samuel explain it to him. You did not follow what God asked you to do. I was there. Saul says, you know what? I heard the people's voices, and I just wanted to obey them. I wanted to be liked. So I disregarded the word of the Lord, and I've sinned against. This is interesting if you read 1 Samuel. I've sinned against you. He doesn't say I've sinned against God. He doesn't do what King Ahab or King David did and rip their clothing and put sackcloth and ashes and plead for God to forgive them for their hubris or arrogance. No, he says to Samuel, I sinned against you. I'm sorry. Will you come back with me? Can you hold my hand as we go back and worship God together? Because that's what Saul always says. I need you, Samuel. I need you to be my yes man. Samuel says, Saul, the kingdom's going to be taken from your hands. You're hiding behind your power, and you're understanding that you think there'll be no consequences. Did you ever have, you got in trouble, you got busted with the teacher, but you kind of smoothed it over to be less than it was because you really didn't want to get detention for the weekend or suspended. So you kind of twisted around. You owned a little bit of it, but not everything. So amid a little bit of wrongdoing, I think, some very famous presidential people. Anyway, I won't quote them. But, definitions of sex or whatever. And so you admit to doing something, but not really. Which is what Saul does. And Samuel says, so you're saying you're sorry, you're confessing, but your heart's not really there. You think, you might put it past me, but do you think God really doesn't see through your facade? You think God doesn't know? Why do you think I'm here? Saul, in the first place, God sent me. And until you're ready to be real with God about where you've been and let God have at you, friends, I feel like this preaches to a lot of us. Until you're ready to be honest and genuine, particularly in Lent, and you're just going through the motions. There's no sincerity in it. One of my favorite proverbs is, insincere talk is like a beautiful, fine, expensive glaze on one of the cheapest of clay pots. In other words, it looks great on the outside, but underneath, it's junk. It's trash. Samuel challenges Saul, look inside. Who are you? Jesus would challenge later the Pharisees and Sadducees and say, you are whitewashed tombs. You look beautiful on the outside, but all it's in is rotting bones. So where are you at in being real with God? Because that's what confession is all about. It's why Lent starts there. Because we can't have a full relationship with God if our relationship with God is based on half-truths and only part of who we are. Because honestly, if I only give God a portion of who I am, then I don't surrender, and I live under the illusion that I'm still in control, and that it's not God first, and then me. King Saul, I feel for you, but man, you had it all backwards.